Hello, and welcome to Tiptree Tuesday, the weekly show where we talk about a James Tiptree Jr. short story for no other reason than because it's fun and I want to. And I'm hoping that there'll be people out there that want to too. James Tiptree Jr. is my favourite writer. And this week we are talking about The Snows Are Melted, The Snows Are Gone. So let's not ramble on anymore. Let's get into it. So before we get into the story this week, let's do our Tiptree Jr. fact of the week. This week, what are we going to go with? Well, let's go with the fact that her mother was a prolific travel writer. And so that meant that Tiptree, let's call her Alice Sheldon, because this was before her Tiptree persona was created. It meant that little Alice, little perfect daughter Alice, used to travel with her mother to various places, a lot of which were quite different than what an American girl might be used to. Central Africa, visiting tribes, really remote locations. You can see, I think, why this would be quite fertile ground for a young girl and might spawn a future science fiction writer. So with that in mind, let's move on to this week's story, which, as I've already mentioned, is The Snows Are Melted, The Snows Are Gone. Now, this was published by Venture Science Fiction magazine in 1969, making it one of her earlier stories. What is it about? What is the main plot of this story? And by the way, please go and read this yourself if you haven't already. It is the second story in this anthology here, which is her first collection of short stories. It's called 10,000 Lightyears from Home. This is the most recent edition. I have a few editions, but this is the one you'll probably be able to get hold of very, very easily from Amazon right now. Trust me, it's worth it. So if you have read that already, I'm going to sort of spoil the premise for you, the plot. What plot there is, anyway. So this story is about a young woman and a wolf. The young woman doesn't have any arms, and she relies on the wolf to help her perform a lot of the day-to-day tasks that she has to perform. They infiltrate a colony of, I suppose, other humans, but who don't seem to have the mental capacity that she has. They seem almost caveman-like they haven't fully evolved. They lure a strong-looking male from this clan, this pack. They lure him out, they capture him, and they sort of put him on a truck to take him away. And that is the plot. Now, as you can tell by that description, that it's a bit vague, and it's not as if I'm leaving any details out. There really aren't many details to be left out. Of course, there are some clues to what's going on, but that's pretty much it. It's very, very thin on plot. That's what happens in the story. Now, you might be thinking, those of you who follow me on TikTok, I mean, I say that, but nobody follows me on TikTok yet. Nobody follows me on YouTube yet, but they will. So those of you in the future that follow me on TikTok, you might be thinking, well, Dan, you gave a really bad review to Unknown Number by Blue New Stifter, which is a name I'm tiring of saying, for having no plot and for being sort of aimless. And yet here you are, making a whole, 20-minute long video about a story which also has very little in the way of plot. Well, maybe. But that's because James Tiptree Jr. brings a lot of other things to the table, which we will discuss. But it certainly can't be argued that, yes, she doesn't give you a lot of information why any of this is happening. So, that you watch them. It's action, right? It's all action. You watch them lure this man away. You watch them take him, but it never tells you why they're doing that. You know that this is set in a sort of post-apocalyptic world, but you don't know why why. You don't know what happened. You don't know if it was war. You don't know if it was climate change or something like that. You do not know why the world is the way that it is. The protagonists, the ones that seem to have the mental capacity to actually communicate and to plan and to plot, they all seem to be mutated in some way. The girl has no arms. The boy you meet later on, briefly, has no legs. Story never tells you why this is the case either. So, in a lot of fiction, if this is the case, if you simply have little to no information to go on, I think usually what happens is it's quite unsatisfying. And that's fair enough, I think. I do think that's fair enough. The difference here is, at least for me, is that I always feel with Tiptree that I'm in safe hands. I always feel like she's in control, she knows what she's doing, and that there are clues there that just need to be interpreted. There's a curious thing in fiction where, I sort of like to think of it as giving the author the benefit of the doubt. And what's weird is I'd never do this for a new author, right? If I was working for a short fiction magazine and I was working my way through the slush pile and there were these kind of new authors, unpublished authors in front of me, I'd never give them the benefit of the doubt in this way, right? Same if I was watching a film from a filmmaker that I'd never seen anything by them before, or it was their debut feature, I'd never give them the benefit of the doubt. But because I've read a lot of Tiptree, because I admire her so much, because the writing, the prose are so beautiful, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to forgo a lot of those comforts that I would usually enjoy when reading a story. It's the same thing when I watch a David Lynch movie. I have this feeling of, him being in control, him knowing, him putting things in front of me on purpose. And so maybe that's unfair to judge a story with that in mind, but that's the way I judge it and that's the way I read it. Now, having said that she gives you nothing, there are clues there. There are things to be read and gleaned from the story. At one point, our female protagonist says something along the lines of, now there's your Y chromosome. So that's it, that's the only clue we're given. And so from this, we can maybe think that maybe they have some kind of fertility issue. Masculine, there's not enough men, maybe. They're mutated physically, maybe they're mutated sort of internally, biologically as well. We don't know, but we can make those sorts of judgments, those sorts of educated guesses. How did the world end in this story? Well, again, we don't know. There's a point in the story where the narrator says that it's hot, but there are no flies, there are no insects. This is one of the first weird, kind of jarring moments. It's silent. Why are there no insects? Well, it could be a climate thing. But if you pair that with the fact that these people are mutated in some way, we tend to associate mutations with radiation, right? So maybe this happened after a nuclear war or something like that. We don't know, but these clues are here, so we can play with them. We can look for meaning. Maybe when we read it a second time, we'll find sort of more clues there. I can understand why people might find that sort of story frustrating. I can. And I can understand why people wouldn't want to give Tiptree the benefit of the doubt in a story like this. So, outside of plot, what is there to enjoy here? Well, for me, her writing is just absolutely gorgeous. Every page, every line, sentence structures, the words she chooses, the metaphor, it's so masterfully done. She's such a beautiful writer. The relationship between this armless girl and this wolf is touching. It's unique. When have you ever seen anything like that before? I want to know more. It's intriguing. This girl kind of has learned to use her feet, and she's eating food out of her canteen by lying on her back and hovering a fork over her mouth. The wolf helps her pull her boots on and off. There's something in that, isn't there? There's something that just sort of intrigues you. You're like, oh, what's this world? Like a little slice of a world that you didn't know before. And even though it's not a long story, it feels rich. It feels lived in. That's not easy to do. And then finally, we might ask, well, what else is there sort of above the surface? What's going on here? And we don't know, and we can never know. But you think to yourself, well, here we have a battle between someone who is weak physically, but has full mental capacity, and someone who is physically strong, but appears to be lacking in mental capacity. Indeed, they are no more than a sort of an animal. So maybe the story is trying to make some kind of statement about that. Between, physical natures and our mental natures. Maybe it's not. Maybe the story has some kind of environmental message. A positive one maybe, about how the human race is resilient and it can adapt. Maybe it is about adaptation. This girl has certainly adapted to her very unfortunate circumstance. Maybe. But these are the kinds of questions that I find I'm constantly asking myself when I read Tiptree. And the fact that there are no answers, the fact that she doesn't give us anything, the fact that we're left to interpret and guess, these are the reasons why you're going to keep going back to these stories. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Us by Jordan Peele, but there are some really intriguing moments in that film, and there's some good imagery, and it does create that uneasy sense of what's happening, And the thing about that is, when you have that feeling, you keep watching. But then, right at the end of the film, he not only answers what's happening, he answers to such an extreme degree. He fills in so many gaps that no one was even asking to be filled in. And you can't help but be disappointed by the answer. The problem with answering a question like, what's happening here, is that when you do finally answer it, people will stop asking. No one's going to go back. No one's going to go back to that film. No one will go back to a story where you fully answer everything. That's my take on it. And certainly, even I will admit, I don't think this is one of Tiptree's best stories. It's an early one. I don't think it's one of my favorites. But there's stuff to like here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'll keep going through this book. That way, if you buy this book, then you'll be able to go through it with me. So, that is Tiptree Tuesday this week. Tiptree Tuesday numero dos. And if you subscribe to this channel on Friday, I will be talking about the very first novel to win the very first Hugo Award, that being The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester. Ugh, I might have mispronounced that name. But until then, cheers, happy reading, and I'll see you next time.